Is South Africa still a gateway for international businesses looking for a foothold on the continent? What do business people do after they sell a majority stake in a business they started? Well, I expect tonight's guest is going to start something new. Let's find out. The Moneymakers this evening. I'm Vusi Whitfield. Tonight we talk about a guy who sold an interest in his business, of course at a time of downgrades, at a time where small and medium businesses are falling on their faces. And of course we've got the entrepreneur and global business speaker Vusi Thembekwayo, who is getting up to lots of things, it would seem. You've sold a majority stake in your business, Activate, to Americans. Suckers! Did you sign and seal this deal before Pravin Gordhan was called back from London?
It was. You know, the deal's been 21 months in negotiation, 8 of those months very intently, very, very intense. And then it happened. So when there was rumblings, so I was at Davos at the beginning of the year, and then when there was rumblings and the conversations and talkings, the deal had to happen. So we made it happen.
And now, post the events of the last couple of weeks, your investors saying to you, Vusi, you knew this was going to happen. You've sold us a lemon.
Well, so remember, investors take protection, right? And this is perhaps a part of the conversation people don't talk about, is when you sell, there is a guarantee period. So we are still in that guarantee period, and I've got to earn it out. You know, if I'd sold a lollipop and I'd got my 50 cents, it'd be fantastic. But we've still got to deliver certain revenues and margins over the next 3 years. Certainly this year and the next 2 years. So I'm not worried about that, and we'll hit those numbers. But no, that's not the case, because we have a 6-year relationship with these specific group of investors.
And they are who?
So it's a company called Watermark.
They're a private company. It's a family business.
It's a phenomenal business. I mean, they're a century old. These guys predate Bain. It's phenomenal. They predate some of the largest management consulting companies in the world. They have a specific approach about market access and market entry. They are very focused on the areas that they specialize in, and they're very focused on the companies with which they partner. So first getting them to partner with Motivate us 6 years ago was a coup for me. And then getting them to start talking to us about, actually, could we take a more permanent position in your business now 3 years ago, and eventually a majority stake in the business. It's certainly been a success wilder than anything I could have imagined.
What did they want from you 6 years ago? What was that conversation about?
Yeah, so 6
here
years.
you are as a well-established, up and coming at that point, public speaker with research behind you, with a bit of a consultancy, but an embryonic consultancy in those days. What do they see? And they say, we're a 100-year-old company. We're older than Bain. We'll talk to this guy. So, you're with all due respect, you were Vusi Junior then.
Yeah. Look, I mean, one of the things about the Americans you've got to appreciate, and it is a part of what makes the Americans Americans, is they really do have the ability to see through the fog. So South Africans, owing, I suppose, to our relationship with the Brits, we tend to be driven a lot by culture, by class, and even more so by things like tradition and how long you've been in the game, right? So you look traditionally at where many SOEs will put out their consulting mandates. They'll look for the big name that's been in the game for a long time and is known. In Americans, that's not necessarily the case. They go, who are the market movers and shifters with whom we can partner? Because their markets are so rapid, so fast moving, that actually whether or not you existed 20 years ago and how well you did 20 years ago is not an indicator of how well you're going to do 5 years from now. So I approached them 6 years ago, and it was a big approach. I was doing some work with Gartner. I was speaking in the US, and I got to meet the CEO here, and I was showing a panel, and I said to him, listen, I'd love to, at the time I said to him, I'd love to license some of the research that you're generating, bring it to my own market, and use it as market entry to clients. And he said, sure, let's have a conversation. The conversation took 3 months, and me flying up and down, and then eventually happened, and we started a license agreement. I think what got them was the rate at which they saw revenues go up. They couldn't believe we were moving the research that they were giving us at the rate at which we were moving it.
What sort of research was it?
So the research focused specifically on the world as it is going to be. Today we talk about third and fourth industrial revolution. These guys were talking about the world of the future 6-7 years ago, long before third and fourth industrial revolution became a word. At the time we were talking about what we call the zero marginal cost society. So there was a big focus on their research. The idea of moving towards digitalization and what it does for businesses. There was a big focus on their research. The second part, which is the part we were moving well and big in South Africa, was a lot about achieving what we call exponential growth in linear markets. South Africa's a linear market, right? So we'll grow at a couple of percent if we're lucky. We're doing 0% growth.
We were going to grow at that. Sorry.
So we're a fairly linear market. Yet there are companies that continue to demonstrate exponential growths in those markets. And their research spoke a lot about how those companies do that. So it was the mechanics. It was a fairly mechanistic approach to take to a management team and say, if you really want to outcompete your competitors in this market, given these constraints, this is the how you've got to do it. In South Africa, it found resonance and it did exceptionally well. And so when they started seeing the numbers move up, they went, well, this is interesting. Could we look at a more long-term relationship? That took about 2 to 3 years. And then the long-term relationship became a tiny portion of the business. It was frankly immaterial. But I think what they were doing was they were doing the due diligence. They wanted to make sure that we were running the business properly, that the books were correct, that we weren't inflating prices, et cetera, that our contracting, because in consulting, contracting is a critical part. Once we got that bedded, then they said, well, let's see if we can have a more long-term relationship. And as I say, that took another 2 years to talk about.
Okay, so now you've done the deal.
Yeah.
You've got a 3-year earn-out.
Yeah.
What is expected of you in these next 3 years?
Well, simply that I've got to deliver the numbers that I've committed.
And what have you committed?
I can't say. But I will tell you that, I'll tell you that on work, pipeline, and on stream, we'll comfortably hit the numbers. So I'm not losing sleep about whether or not we'll hit the numbers. What is exciting for me is the proceeds of the transaction and what I intend to do with those proceeds and unlocking the rest of the continent.
Okay, now
that's the exciting bit.
It is, because you were on Dragon's Den.
Right.
And you made lots of commitments on TV, but
Right.
you didn't actually hand over any money, a little birdie tells me, because what was presented to you just wasn't actually of sufficient quality.
Yeah, I did. Of the transactions we did on Dragon's Den, I participated in 2. So I participated in 5 on the show, and 2 where I actually dispersed
you did?
some money.
You did give some money.
Yeah.
But that must have opened your eyes a bit to potential of that concept and of the angel funding sort of model. So you get proceeds from this particular transaction. 3 years from now, you've earned out, you move on to a new venture, and that is a Pan-African strategy to fund new businesses.
Yeah, 100%. So, we've just partnered now with CBA, which is the Commercial Bank of Africa in Kenya, and so that gives us market access into Kenya with a licensed partner. We're licensed here in South Africa by the FSB, and we're looking for partners in Nigeria. So my vision, which is what I'm going to be working on for the next decade of my life, I'd like to think, is simply building a Pan-African venture capital fund. The problem we have in Africa, you need to understand it, is let me put it to you this way. It took Europe 1,800 years of commercial history before they built private equity and venture capital models as we have them today. We've only come out of colonization maybe 100 years ago, if you're generous, and we're using those same models. So the disconnect between Africa and the rest of the world is you're using instruments of capital not fit for the market in which you're operating. That's why you hear funders say, where are the entrepreneurs? And entrepreneurs say, where are the funds?
Sure.
Because in the middle, there is a big disconnect. My own view, by the way, is I think we've got to flip the model upside down. So if you look, we've tested a little bit with my growth fund. We're doing tiny loans, but at a higher rate. So you can't do a 30-page term sheet drawn up by lawyers costing you 100,000 Rand when you're doing these kind of deals. You've got to do a simple 3-page document that says to the entrepreneur, I'm going to give you X, you're going to give me Y, and this is how we're going to monitor our relationship. And rather than give you 500,000 Rand up front, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'm going to give you 50K. And then I want you to see if you can pay me that 50K back in 6 weeks, because if you can, I'm going to reach it up to 100K. You pay me that. So what you've got to do is you've got to take smaller steps. 100%.
You're beginning to sound like a payday loans company, but on a far larger scale.
That's what's required. The problem is, let me put it to you simply. The entrepreneur goes to the funder and says, give me 2 million. His risk calculation is on a 2 million Rand exposure. If he goes to the funder and says, give me 200,000, the risk calculation on the same transaction is much, much smaller. Sure. So let me give you a sense, for instance, after Dragon's Den, one of the transactions I did was SA Florist, but all of us did that transaction well. 4 out of 5 did the transaction. The reason was it was too much risk for either one of us as an individual to do, but it was enough risk that we could all share the risk. So what happens when you share risk is the amount of risk sitting on your balance sheet is lower, but the potential upside is still the same.
So do we see you partnering then with the guys like, I forget, it's like 2 or 3 years ago, but your former Dragons?
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to chat to them. We're in a WhatsApp group, so what comes of it will come of it. But the approach specifically that I've taken is I'm talking to, and the conversations we're having is with the large institutions, large sovereign wealth funds, and large impact funds who've got serious amounts of capital to put in.
So you will
who
risk
need
some
to
of your
apply this
capital,
absolutely,
and you will partner with them.
100%.
How much capital will you have to risk?
I've already put 10 in.
10 million?
Yeah, so I've already put 10 in. And by the way, in South Africa, we already have a partner that's come on board with us, a large corporate listed that operates in the tiling space called Italtile.
Okay.
So they've come on board with us because they've understood the vision of what it is that we want to do.
And what are you doing with Italtile?
Yeah, so it's a great question. So for Italtile specifically, we're building enterprise development centers in rural South Africa.
Yeah.
The very first one is in Thohoyandou. So we're the only ED center in Thohoyandou. And in the ED center, because I'm an alum of Halt Business School as well as the London School of Economics, I've got professors and academic content for free from LSE and Halt. Gratis. The entrepreneurs who come and use the center use it for free. The only cost they pay is they have to do 3 modules in a year. The modules are for free. So the cost they pay is getting educated. But for us, the education is important because we've seen a big part of the failure rate is an entrepreneur doesn't know how to read an income statement.
So
he then doesn't know how to run his business.
Where's this a business and where does it stop being a charity and become a business?
Oh, it's certainly a business for us, right? Because to put up each of these structures, first, corporates pay us to do it. So we're not doing it for free. Second, it's an important part of how we funnel the funds to entrepreneurs to give them these small loans so they can wretch it up and build
the entrepreneurs come to you, they get educated, you spot the talent,
100%,
and then you back the talent you choose as a result of the performance through those.
So I think about somebody like, let me give you an example. I think about somebody like Slee. Slee was our first test case now 2 years ago, runs a small security business, at the time was doing about 6 million rand. Slee will do 28 million this year. When she came to see us, she had a VAT liability that she couldn't pay. So she was looking to raise 2 million. And then when we went through and we said, yeah, but you got a 1.8 million rand VAT liability. So actually you need 200,000 for operating expenses and this 1.8 million VAT liability. So got into an arrangement with SARS, helped her settle the VAT liability over payment period, gave her the 200,000 to operate the business, and then gave her additionally more money over a period of time. She'll do 28 million this year. Now, any person working in the funding space, whether they're private equity, venture capital, whatever they call themselves, will tell you that to go from 6 to 28 million, that kind of multiple growth in 2.5 years is phenomenal. It's achievable, Bruce. It's not rocket science.
And these are South Africans, people who are often written off by traditional funders, people who say, oh no, there's too much risk associated. Now sure, you're going to burn your fingers, and you probably have already.
Sure. Don't ask me about those.
Are you making more than you're losing?
100%. I wouldn't be here otherwise. You know, my view is that good business is good business. So you can do good and make money. Those two things are not mutually exclusive. What is important though, and I think it's important for me to say this, is we're not careless in our approach. So one of the things you hear when people talk about my growth fund, for instance, is you don't just get a meeting with us. There is a set of things you've got to fulfill. So there's information we ask for up front. If you don't have a set of audited financials, we don't take a meeting. If we can't get a sense of your track record, we won't take the meeting. To qualify for a meeting with us, you simply have to make 80,000 rand a month or 1 million rand a year. So these are not unachievable targets for entrepreneurs to come and see us. This morning I was sitting in a session with a guy who runs a farm. He's an amazing little guy, but he's only using 3% of the arable land of the farm that he has, and already he's hitting his revenue targets. He's profitable. His biggest problem is he needs more money to buy the inputs. But the kind of money he's asking for is a large sum of money. So I said to him, I understand why so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so has turned you away. It's because you want to build this 100% farm up front. Why don't we take it from 3% to 10%? How do we try that as an approach? And why don't we take, because he's got a part of the farm that's piggery, let's take that part of the farm and let's actually help you rent it out to some people who operate that space, watch them operate it so you can learn how it works. My view about radical economic transformation is this is it.
Correct.
It isn't the stuff we're talking about. It's not taking stuff en masse. It's not taking institutions of capital en masse, ergo banks. It isn't. What it is those of us who work as entrepreneurs have to use the instruments of capital to understand a simple truth. You have to build over time. It doesn't come overnight, and you can't grab, because if you do, what you effectively do is you'll take the asset and don't have the knowledge to operate it. And as we've seen in a country not so far from ours, just north of our borders, sooner or later that asset is worth nothing.
Vusi Thembekwayo, always a pleasure. Nice to see you. Thank you very much. Entrepreneur, global business speaker Vusi Thembekwayo. We're going to have to stop calling him that fairly soon. We're going to have to call him venture capitalist Vusi one of these days as well. He's making some inroads. He's managed to get a nice cash injection as a result of the sale of a majority stake in his business Activate. That money will be utilized to grow other businesses across this continent. How he's going to do it, you just heard. More opportunities to benefit from downturns next time here on the Moneymakers. Till then, bye-bye.